turn the microphones on, and then I'm going to press that button, and I think we are live. Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know, as always, with these live streams, if you can hear me and you can see me okay. There is no live chat currently on that side, but hopefully it will appear. Yes, it will appear. Excellent. Welcome to the live Q&A for May 2023. As always, I'm going to be going through all of the questions that I've been asked in advance over on the Board Game Geek Guild. And then we're going to throw over to the questions that you've been asking me live while we are live. So if you are watching this live and you have any questions for me, please put the word question in capitals in the chat and then put your question in there. What normally happens is that I'll spend about 45 minutes going through all of the questions that I've been asked in advance, and then we'll go through all of the live questions. We'll be here for about an hour and a half today. Speaking of the questions in advance, I have a guild over on Board Game Geek. It is guild number 2258. Thank you very much, Peter, for the super chat. Very nice. We'll get on to Peter in a minute. We're going to be talking about him later in the show. Yeah, if you're on Board Game Geek, I have a guild. It is guild number 2258. And if you join up to the guild and you subscribe, then every month when I do these live Q&As, about a week before, I post a thread on there and get people to ask questions in advance. So if you're one of these people who is watching this back afterwards, because to be fair, 95% of the views on this video come not live, come from people watching it back afterwards. And if you're one of those people and you do want to ask me a question next month, head on over to the guild, subscribe to the guild 2258. Vicky will put a link to it in the chat, and there is a link to it in the description of the video. And when I post that thread asking for questions in advance, you can ask those questions. And yeah, any super chats that come in, all of the advertising revenue from this video goes to charity, and the super chat money also goes to charity as well. So thank you very much, Peter. I don't know where the charity money is going this month, but you will have helped contribute to that. Right then, let's get on over. So the first question that I've been asked, and this is a question from Bobby Lamb. So Bobby Lamb asked me, and I can't remember where he asked me this question. It was on some form of social media or something, and I said this is a really good question. And what I'll do is I will add it to my next month's live Q&A. So I don't normally do this, but I did it just as an exception for this time. And this is, what is the difference between artwork and graphic design? So quite often people think the two things are the same. The two things are not the same. The two things are very different. So artwork, I mean, how can I explain this in terms that I would understand? Artwork is basically artwork. It is a drawing, it is a picture, it is something like that. The graphic design is, generally speaking, the icons. Not just the icons, but it's how the structure of a card or the structure of the game board is put together. So the borders that you would have, how things are broken up into various sections, what font you use or what typeface you use for the numbers, and what size and color and stroke and everything else. So sometimes you will get the same person doing both, but that's not a common thing. Normally you will have an artist for the game who does the artwork, and then the graphic designer is the person who puts the user interface effectively over the artwork. And that's what we all know. So you can get games with good artwork and bad graphic design. You can get games with bad artwork but good graphic design. And there are certain people who do both. So if we were to pick one, for example, Mr. Ian O'Toole, who occasionally pops into the chat, maybe if I say his name 3 times, Ian O'Toole, Ian O'Toole, Ian O'Toole, he might pop into the chat. Ian does both. Ian does both artwork and graphic design. And that's one reason why his games are so good, because it's the same person doing both, so he knows exactly what is needed. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm happy to give some more visual examples somehow. I can't really do it right now, but hopefully you know what I mean. Next question is from Brian Robson. Now, before we answer Brian's questions for this month, we do need to address Brian's questions for last month and the previous month. So a couple of months ago, Brian asked me what was my opinion of Aldi's Otis, which are their cheap discount budget equivalent of hobnobs. And finally, we went shopping and we bought some. So I have here a pack of, and this is not product placement, by the way. I don't get paid anything for making these videos, but this is Aldi's Crumbly Otis, which are their equivalent of hobnobs, which is one of my favourite biscuits. And I'm happy to say that they're almost identical. Very crumbly. They taste just the same. and yeah, they're almost identical. So if you're looking for a cheaper alternative to Hobnobs, then Aldi's Oaties, available at your local Aldi. So thank you very much, Brian, for that. Unfortunately, what that means is we've got a pack of biscuits now in the house. Yeah, so I'm going to package them up. We have people coming over on Saturday all day for games, and that will be the afternoon and evening snack for other people. Right, anyway, back to the questions for this month. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but there has recently been a very, very important article in the news, which is affecting the entire world, and you can't underestimate the impact that this is going to have. And this is that after a very controversial scientific experiment, it has been revealed that Jaffa cakes were the best biscuit for dunking. And Brian is asking what is my opinion of it. I personally would not like to dunk a Jaffa cake. There are certain biscuits that are perfectly suited to dunking. For example, Hobnobs. I think are good, although you don't want to dunk them too long because they will fall apart. Definitely we're hitting hard with the topics this evening. But yeah, apparently Jaffa cakes are the best biscuit for dunking. I can't see that. The base would go too soggy. The chocolate would melt. Yeah, I've not tried it myself, but apparently that's scientific. What do they know? The next question, and this is again something that shocked me to my core. This is, are there any biscuits which are available in both chocolate and non-chocolate versions where I think the non-chocolate version is better? So we've talked about Hobnobs. Personally, the ones with the milk chocolate covering, if you gave me a packet of those, I would just eat them all straight away, non-stop. I'd just go through them. They're so Moorish and so lovely. So generally speaking, anything that has a thin layer of chocolate on it, for me, is a better version. However, I did not know about Viennese whirls. Apparently, according to Brian, there are Viennese whirls. If you don't know what they are, Google them, look them up. There are versions of those which are chocolate, which he said are an abomination. Yeah, I can't see that working on a Viennese whirl. But on normal biscuits, definitely pro-chocolate. Next question, non-biscuit related. This is, what is my favourite Civilization type game? And what do I think makes a good Civ game? And whilst we're on the subject, have I played Mosaic, A Story of Civilization? So my favourite Civilization style game is, Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization. Effectively, second edition of Through the Ages. I think the game is absolutely fantastic. I love it. It's got everything that I would want from a Civ game. And Civ games are one of my favourite genre of game. And one of the reasons for that is that when I first got into gaming, back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, where I was playing 1830, Acquire, Axis and Allies, Civilization, Avalon's Hill Civilization, and then Advanced Civilization was one of those games that was around at the time. And I played it loads, and it was my number one favourite game. I absolutely loved it. For me, that game now falls into the category of unplayable, because it is just way too long with way too much downtime. But I've always enjoyed Civilization style games. So Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization is my favourite one. What do I think makes a good Civ game? Well, generally speaking, all of the things that you have, you need to feel that you're growing and that you're expanding. And as you grow, you're developing technologies, your empire is growing, you're taking over more things, you're having to do the military aspect of the game in order to protect your borders from the inevitable wars. Basically, all of those things that you normally have in a Civilization style game, that's what I would expect from a Civ game. Now, Mosaic, A Story of Civilization, I saw this game set up at Baycon recently. I think Richard Dewsbury had it and he was playing it, and it looked absolutely amazing. I've not played it myself. It looks fantastic, and I've been told that I will really enjoy the game. So if I was in the position where I didn't have a big pile of games still that I've received that I haven't covered on the channel yet, that is a game which I would be contacting the publisher about and asking them if they were interested in me covering it on the channel, because it does look absolutely fantastic. The final question from Brian is, if I was designing my own Civ game, what type of improvements would I include? So one of the things which I always feel is missing from a lot of Civilization games is the sharing of technology. And even though Through the Ages is one of my favourite Civilization games, I do find it a little bit unusual that one player might still be doing bronze mining while everybody else is in the 20th century and they're still doing bronze mining. And it's like, I think, and some Civilization games do have this. And if you're watching this back afterwards, or if you're watching this live, let me know if there is a Civilization game that you know of, because I'm pretty sure there is one that I can't think of to mind, where at a certain point in the game, everybody's technology goes up to a certain level. Because otherwise, you get in these weird situations where one player has got nuclear weapons and another player has just invented paper. Well, that's not realistic. So I think one of the things that I would have in a Civilization style game is where at a certain point in the game, everybody develops a certain level of technologies. Maybe there's a bonus for who got it the first or something like that. But yeah, there is definitely at least one game that I know of that does this in some way, and I just can't remember what it was. So yeah, let me know in the chat. Right, next questions. That's all of the questions from Brian Robson. Now we go to a question from Brian McCarthy. This is, did I watch any of the coronation? Do I think the monarchy should be abolished, reformed, or stay pretty much the same? So I've asked the question because you've asked the question, but I'm not really going to give my answer. For me, any discussion about things like the monarchy falls into the same category as politics, in that if I give my opinion on this, it will make some people happy, it will make some people not happy. I do have my own thoughts on it, but yeah, it's not something that I'm going to dive into a lot of detail of here. The one thing that did bother me, though, is when the bank holidays, these new bank holidays get announced at short notice, and people's doctor's operations for like critical surgery got cancelled. And that's not something that I was a big fan of. So I get the fact that the Queen has died, and the Queen has been our Queen for, you know, a very, very long time, and it's very sad that she's died. But suddenly the whole country gets a day off. Some people are happy about that, but a lot of very important medical procedures that were booked in for that day got cancelled and delayed, and that's not good. You know, if you're ever in the same place as me and I've had a drink, then I will probably go into a lot more detail about this as people start to disappear off from the table that I'm sat at, because it is one of the subjects which I do have opinions on, but yeah, I'm not going to share those full opinions here. Right, next question from Gavin. What game is my guilty pleasure? Not necessarily the greatest game in the world, but one that you enjoy playing all of the time nonetheless. Which is a very good question, but I've been thinking about this, and I'm not sure I actually have one. There's a lot of games which are actually rated quite low on BGG, and I've said before that any game that is rated less than a 7 on BGG, I'm probably not going to play. But there are a number of games which they have low ratings on BGG, which I actually do enjoy playing. I wouldn't class them as guilty pleasures. They're just ones that I enjoy more than most other people seem to. I don't think any of them are particularly bad games. Pretty much all of the games that I'm playing at the moment are games that I really like. And the thing is, there's so much choice. So I think maybe, 15, 20 years ago, I might have had a game that's like, look, this game isn't very good, but I kind of enjoy playing it. So let's dig it out now and again because I've only got 20 games in my collection. Whereas now, with 750 games in the collection, and 250 of those are very, very good games, I don't see me ever being in the situation where I've got, okay, there's a game that's over there. It's not that great, but I enjoy playing it. And I can't think of that. I can't think of a game right now which I think is not great, which I enjoy playing. Whether I generally enjoy playing the games that are good, and I don't enjoy the games that I think are bad. If that makes any sense, I don't know. Next question from Mark. In all the games ever, what has been my favourite physical component? Now, this was actually quite an easy one to answer, but I didn't think it was going to be. So I actually thought, oh no, I'm not going to be able to think about all of the games that I've played and what's been my favourite component for many of them. So I posted on my Slack channel this afternoon, and I said, look, I need help. What games have I talked about over the last few years where I've looked at a component and said, oh, this is a great component? And straight away, the answer was the generator from Frostpunk. And I was like, oh yeah, that's actually an easy answer to, yeah. So there you go. Really, really easy answer is the generator from Frostpunk is probably it's my favourite physical component. and it's probably the most impressive one. And the reason why it's my favourite one is I think the game's great. I love the setting of Frostpunk, and it's on my list to start painting at some point. I've been painting through the miniatures from Frostpunk, and I haven't yet got around to painting the generator. If you don't know, it's about 10 inches tall or something like that. Is it over there? Yeah, it's over there. Vicky will get it later on. Oh, is you going to get it now? Vicky's going to get it now. That's fine. Don't need the base. But yeah, there is the generator from Frostpunk. So yeah, it's that tall. However that tall is, and yeah, it's very impressive. This is the one with the wash on it. But yeah, once this is painted, it's going to look fantastic. But I want to make sure I know what colours I'm going to paint it and what scheme I'm going to use before I start. Because knowing me, I'll get halfway through. I'll spend 20 hours on it, and then I'll decide, oh no, I'm going to do that copper instead of silver, and then I'll spend another 20 hours repainting it. So need to decide first. The other one that came to mind was the Gears from Tzolk'in. Now, Tzolk'in is a game from 2013, but when that came out, the gears from the game, that was quite, and I'll use the word revolutionary, not as a pun, but I think that was quite a good component that worked really well. Next question for Mark is, when you are given two paths to choose from in a game, such as Gloomhaven, and one of them is good, like be kind or beneficial to others or the right thing to do, whatever, and one of them is bad, evil, harmful, etc., which are you more likely to choose and why? And I am actually interested in what other people have to think about this. So, assuming that Chrissy is watching, hopefully you are, then could you turn this into a question on the guild? So speaking of the guild, as I mentioned earlier on, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you my answer to this, but I'm interested to see what other people think. So head on over to the guild number 2258, and in a few minutes' time, this question will appear on the guild. And it is when you are given two paths in a game, so choices of which one you want to do, and one of them is generally considered to be the good choice, one of them is generally considered to be the bad choice, which are you most likely to choose and why? I guess it's a similar thing for computer games as well, because in a lot of these computer games, you get the choice. Now, I generally go with the nice approach. I've never really analysed why, other than I think part of me metagames it and thinks, well, that's what we're supposed to do, and that's going to lead to the good result. Whereas the nasty approach is probably going to lead to the bad result. Now, that could have been the thing in a lot of old computer games, or even old role-playing games, or even old role-playing computer games. But one of the great things about Gloomhaven and other games of that genre is that the evil choices are not necessarily the wrong choices. There are, and the people who write these games, and the people who write the narrative and create the stories, are doing a really good job at actually making it open-ended and an open world. Because otherwise, if you end up with, oh, the good choices always lead to good things and the bad choices always end up in trouble, then nobody's ever going to take the bad choices. So I think it's a good thing that these games offer a choice. Now, saying that, the last time that I've been playing through Gloomhaven Digital, I've actually tried playing down the evil approach because it is a viable option. And I think as long as, games designers and narrative writers allow this option for playing it a different way with a different set of results, or at least a viable set of results, then that's good that we've got choices. But I am curious to see, again, head on over to the guild, because the more people that respond, the more answers we'll get. And I'm curious what percentage of people go with the nice approach. My guess is going to be about 80 to 90%. That is my gut feeling on this. I know there are certain individuals, Mark being one of them, who always likes to take the evil approach. But I think Mark does that because everybody else wants to take the good approach and he wants to do something different. But yeah, let me know what you think. Next question from Dan. Other than Mage Knight, what games is Luke Hector most wrong about? I mean, we've only got another hour. So, there's so many. For those who don't know, I'm good friends with Luke. Luke runs his own YouTube channel, The Broken Meeple, and Luke has very strong opinions about certain games which are extremely good games, but Luke doesn't like them. The main ones being Great Western Trail and Concordia. I think the two that he is infamous for not liking, which are generally considered extremely good games. Right, Elaine's got a really good question, which are, what are your favourite games to play outdoors? Now, years ago, when we used to host a small convention at this house twice a year, it was basically the prelude to GridCon, and we would have 30 people round playing games for 3 days. There was one in the summer and one in the winter. The one in the summer, we used to have people sat outside. We don't generally play games outside at all. And I think the reason for that is the wind. Generally speaking, the wind will blow the cards away. Now, there are certain games which are great to play outside, but playing games outside is not something that we normally do. So I don't have any favourite games to play outside because it's not anything that we actually do normally. I would have to go through my games collection and work out which games we could play outside. I remember we played Seventh Continent outside once, and basically we had all of the cards over the back table in the back garden, and we had a little stone on each one, holding it down, because otherwise it would have blown away. Next question from Keith. Which team did you support when you first started following Formula One? Keith said it was Tyrrell for him. So I first started watching Formula One in 1997 to 1998. It was somewhere, I think, in the latter half of 1997. And the team that was doing well at the time was McLaren. And I'm pretty sure it was Mercedes engine. So it was McLaren Mercedes. And it was Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard. So when I started watching it, that was the team that was, doing well at the time. And that's the team that I kind of started following. Over the years, I've followed different teams, but that's the one that I followed when I first started. Keith also wants to know, did I ever play the Waddingtons board game? So there is a Formula One board game from Waddingtons, which is apparently very good. I've not played it myself. I don't think I've played it myself. No, don't think I have. Next question from Paul Snuggs. Winner of last month's contest. Yeah. Now I'm going to announce the winner for... Well, no, sorry, the winner of the contest from 2 months ago. I'm going to announce the winner from last month's contest fairly soon. So Paul says, you've done quite a few solo playthroughs now. Do I have a favourite game that plays solo? And also, has any game you've played multiplayer turned out to be surprisingly good when solo? So my favourite solo game is Under Falling Skies. I think Under Falling Skies is a fantastic game. I'm actually wearing, coincidentally, and this wasn't deliberate, I'm actually wearing the Under Falling Skies t-shirt today, but the reason why I've got it covered up is because I've got, this is green, and you'll be able to see right through me because I'm using a green screen. So that's why it's covered over. Under Falling Skies is my favourite solo game, but I have done a lot of solo playthroughs over the last few years, and yeah, lots of them. Now, when you say surprisingly good, yeah, I mean, most Uwe games for me, the solo mode, I really enjoyed the solo mode of Uwe's games. I like Lost Ruins of Arnak solo mode. I like Rebuilding Seattle. New York City that I covered on the channel recently, that is a fantastic solo mode because you don't just play against one AI opponent. You can, but New York City, the solo rules for it, it's actually a solo bot, and you can use that solo bot with any number of players. So I could play a solo game with 3 bots, and each bot has 12 different levels of customization of difficulty. So yeah, any multiplayer game that turned out surprisingly good when solo. I'm gonna say no because of the word surprisingly. A lot of the games that I've played multiplayer have been fantastic solo. Maracaibo, Great Western Trail, Concordia, they are great multiplayer games that were also great solo, but they weren't a surprise to me. I was kind of expecting them to be. Next question from Johan. Johan is saying, I'm not sure if you've played Ashes Reborn, Rise of the Phoenixborn competitively, as he hasn't heard me mention of it. So Johan, you need to follow me more. Now, it is true that I don't talk about it that much, but I have said a number of times over the last sort of 8 years or so, however long it's been out, Ashes Rise of the Phoenixborn, or what is now Ashes Reborn Rise of the Phoenixborn, is my favourite Dueling Wizards card game. I think the game is absolutely fantastic. It's painful the fact that I haven't covered it much on the channel. I'm sure I've covered it at some point, but I want to cover it more. I love the game. I think it's an amazing game. And as I say, it is my favourite Dueling Wizards card game. Now, I am aware that a new solo stroke co-op expansion has just come out for it, called Ashes Reborn Red Rains. And yeah, I would absolutely 100% be covering this on the channel. The reason why I haven't is I got in contact with the publisher, which is Plaid Hat Games, and they sent me the upgrade kit for Ashes Reborn, and I haven't covered that on the channel yet. And there is no way that I'm going to contact them and say, hi, I'm Paul Grogan. You sent me some stuff for Ashes Reborn. Thank you very much for that. I've done nothing with it. I haven't covered it on the channel. Please, can I have more stuff? So I'm not going to do that. At the point where I do get round to covering Ashes Reborn, I will then reach out to them and say, I would definitely like to cover this, because for me, I actually prefer cooperative games than competitive games. Now, don't get me wrong, I love competitive games, but I actually prefer cooperative games a little bit more. So the fact that there is a cooperative version of Ashes Rise of the Phoenixborn is ticking a lot of my boxes. Yeah, definitely want to cover that. So yeah, I'm glad you're having fun with it, and I've heard it's very, very good. And yes, I haven't tried it, but I would like to. Next question from Angus. Easiest question of the month. Have I ever attended a comic convention, not counting the comic section of Essen or another board game convention? No. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to answer the question a bit more other than just no, but the answer is no. Yeah, so Essen, when I first started going to Essen, and it was either 99 or 2000, I can't remember which, but for the first 2 or 3 years that I was going to Essen, it was actually Essen with comic action or something like this. And at least a third of the convention was all just comics. It's not like that now. There might be 1 or 2 stalls selling comics, but it used to be, there was a massive amount of comics there. And whilst I do read some graphic novels, in fact, the ones that I'm reading at the moment, I'm still ploughing my way through the Marvel Ultimates series, but I'm also reading ones that a local friend Pete lent me, which is the Usagi Yoyumbo or something or other. It's a samurai rabbit. But I've started reading through those as well. So I do read some graphic novels, and I've read some amazing graphic novels over the time. Lock and Key was fantastic. Gotham Chronicles? No, Gotham Central. Gotham Central is another one that was fantastic. I've read a number of the DC ones as well. So I do read the occasional graphic novel, but I've never been to a comic convention as such. Right, the next question is from Tobias. And if Peter is still in the chat at the moment, hopefully he still is. Yes, he is. Then he can answer this more than I can. So Tobias would love to know more about Kutna Horror, which is the new game coming from Czech Games Edition this year. Have I tried it? I haven't tried it. If so, what's my thoughts on it? Will I cover it on the channel? And if so, when is it scheduled? So many of you will know that over the years, I've done a lot of work with Czech Games Edition. They were the first ever client that I had when I first started, and I used to do a huge amount of work with them and for them. Over the last few years, as I've sort of changed the work that I do, and CGE have changed the work that they do, I'm no longer anywhere near as much involved as I was. And right now, I currently have absolutely no work planned for CGE. So they haven't asked me to be involved in this. I haven't done any playtesting for it. I haven't done anything. Now, I've seen some images of it. But one of the designers is in the chat right now, which is Peter. And if you've got any questions for him, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them in the chat. Now, me and Peter go back a long way. So Peter used to work for Czech Games Edition as a full-time employee. He doesn't anymore. But if you remember back to all of those years where I used to go to the American conventions. So I don't go to the American conventions anymore. Obviously, COVID put a stop to it. But then during COVID, I made the decision for my own health reasons that it wasn't good for me to travel. I don't do well traveling long distance and then basically suffering severe jet lag for 7 days and getting back and feel like it's taken a year off my life, because it probably had. It was not good for me to go away. But in the few years before COVID, I was going to BGG Con, I was going to Gen Con, and I was going to Origins. And at those conventions, I would be sharing a room with Peter. So me and Peter have had many experiences going to conventions together and shared many stories together in hotel rooms at night. So I've known him for a very long time, and it just makes me, it brings a nice warm feeling to my heart that this is one of his designs. Now, I don't think it's a solo design. I think it's a co-design with some of your friends or somebody else. But obviously CGE right now are very, very popular. Lost Ruins of Arnak did a lot for them, because they had a couple of bad years, I think, where they released a couple of games that I don't think were very good. But then they came back with Lost Ruins of Arnak, and CGE are absolutely on the map now as known as doing some extremely good games. So I'm really happy that CGE have picked this game up, because they're going to do a great job with it. The CGE team of developers is fantastic. The CGE team of artists, graphic designers and everything else. So I am very much looking forward to trying the game. Now, Peter has said that he's going to try, because even though CGE are not going to ask me to cover the game, I don't think they're going to ask me to cover the game. Peter is going to try and get an early copy for me. He's going to try and sneak one into his underpants, and he's going to get it to me somehow. And I am going to try and cover it on the channel. Now, it might end up being a Patreon only stream, or it may end up being a public stream. I'm not sure yet. But even though I'm probably not going to get paid for covering it, I want to cover it basically as a yeah, just because it's Peter's game. And yeah, I think it's going to be great. The word that I've heard from the people who have been involved in it is that it is a good game. So we'll find out. He's going to bring me extra Jaffa cakes. Excellent. Right. Okay. So there we go. That's that. So yeah, it's scheduled for possibly just before Essen. Now, Essen this year is going to be interesting, because we're actually going away on honeymoon at the start of September. So for the first 2 weeks in September, we're going to be going away on honeymoon. I then get back from honeymoon, and of course that's 2 weeks that I've lost in terms of my work time. So I will have loads of work to catch up on, but that's the 2 weeks before Essen. And in those 2 weeks before Essen, I want to be trying to get hold of some new games that are coming out at Essen and covering them so that people can see playthroughs of them before they are released at Essen. So it's going to be a busy time, those last couple of weeks in September. But anyway, moving on. Next question from Mike. How do I feel about the rise in competitive games that are getting cooperative expansions, stroke modules, etc.? And he's quoted some. He's quoted Maracaibo, Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, which has recently had a cooperative mode. Scythe has had the Fenris module, which apparently makes it cooperative. Lost Ruins of Arnak, the new expansion for that this year, is offering a cooperative mode. And basically any game that was designed as a competitive game that's having a cooperative game added to it. Now, personally, I'm a big fan of that, because I refer back to what I said about 10 minutes ago, in that I actually prefer cooperative games now to competitive games. So the Maracaibo cooperative game I've played and is fantastic. The Terraforming Mars Crisis module I've played and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that, because what it enables is it just opens the game up to a wider audience. There are some people who don't like competitive games. Vicky, for example, doesn't like competitive games. So let's say we had a game like Lost Ruins of Arnak, which you might like, you will, right? But you don't want to play it because it's competitive. Whereas suddenly we've got a cooperative version and we can both be exploring the jungle and no. I tried. She's nodding. Right. Okay. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. And then Mike goes into detail about some of the things. But I think generally Mike's comment was that he loves the idea of them being cooperative, but in reality they take away a lot of the tension that the game was designed to have. Now I can see that, because the tension in a multiplayer game is, am I going to score more points than them, right? But all of these games have a tension in them other than that. It's just a different kind of tension. And certainly I feel that tension, I actually feel it more in a cooperative game. So for example, in a competitive game of Maracaibo, or let's say Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, the tension in that is, I'm trying to score more points than you. That's it. That's the tension. In the cooperative game, they have to change the rules of the game, and you have this crisis, and all of these things are going wrong, and you've got to fix them before the end of the game. Otherwise, you all lose. Well, that for me, that's more tension. It's a different kind of tension, but it's more tension. Okay, moving on. Next question is from Andy Pelton. And Andy is asking now, this is based on, I think this is based on the fact that there's one particular company right now which is in a lot of trouble, specifically relating to their crowdfunding campaigns. And Andy is asking, should crowdfunding services, for example, Kickstarter, GameFound, BackerKit, put a block on companies serially creating campaigns when the previous campaigns have not yet completed? Andy feels that there should be more checks and balances on companies creating a new crowdfunding campaign and then quite clearly using the funds to prop up the previous campaign and then getting into a spiral. They should be forced into account for financial and production status of the campaign and the company funds. Absolutely right. That in an ideal world, that's where we would be. And until a few years ago, that's where we were. Well, no, we weren't there. Companies were just absolutely doing one campaign after another. Then Kickstarter changed their rules. And we all thought, great, okay, Kickstarter are going to step in, they're going to help out. And they basically had a rule where you must have fulfilled or at least started fulfilling one campaign before you can launch another one. And that was great. I thought that was great. However, some companies that absolutely who are producing 20 games a year, well, they're absolutely screwed. Suddenly their entire business model falls apart. So I think Kickstarter changed it. And they only had those rules for new companies. Now, I've recently been chatting with Aidan and Simon from Dranda Games. They've got a game on Kickstarter right now, which is Pioneer Rails. And if you're interested, I've done a playthrough video of it on the channel. It's a great roll and write game. Well, a flip and write game. There's no rolling of dice. But I spoke to them about it because the original plan for me to cover that game on the channel was September 2022. And I actually covered it in the channel in May 2023. And the reason for that is Dranda Games were blocked by Kickstarter. Blocked might be the wrong word. They basically were not allowed to launch the Kickstarter for Pioneer Rails. And they were going to launch it in September 2022. They weren't allowed to because their previous game had not yet fulfilled. So those rules came in and they hit Dranda Games hard because Dranda Games had it all planned. They were going to do it and they weren't allowed to. Now, speaking to them about it, that rule only applies until you've done 3 Kickstarters. Once you've done 3 Kickstarters, apparently, after that, you can do whatever you want. So those checks are in there effectively for new publishers. The problem that we have is that you have publishers who've released 10 games, so they're now allowed to do whatever they want. And unfortunately, that's just where we are. Now, the company that sprung to mind is Mythic Games. And if you don't know what's going on with Mythic Games, all you need to do is Google it and you will find the answers very quickly because at the moment it's being talked about everywhere. Every day, somebody is posting on a Facebook group about it. Somebody's posting on Board Game Geek. Somebody's making a video about it. Everybody at the moment is talking about Mythic Games and how much of a bad situation they are in. And for those people interested in the situation, I read something earlier on today that GameFound have actually just pulled all of the stuff from Mythic Games to stop people late pledging for their game. So it's another twist to the story of what's going on. But basically, Mythic Games have got a number of games outstanding, all of which made millions on Kickstarter. And it's looking likely that they're not going to be able to deliver any of them. And they are in the process of asking backers for more money. Basically, you backed a game, you paid us this amount of money, but you're not going to get your game unless you give us the same amount of money again. It's almost criminal what they are doing. But yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I suspect none of these games are going to ever get made. And backers are not going to get their copies. I don't know where these millions of dollars went, but yeah, that's the situation. So yeah, it's not a good situation. And if you are somebody who backs games on Kickstarter, it is a risk. It's always a risk. I mean, many things in life are a risk. I do work. I do work for publishers and I create videos and I help them with various other things and I do some rulebook editing a little bit and I do some game development and I do that work. And then I send them an invoice and sometimes I don't get paid. And then the company disappears. And I'm like, and that's happened to me. That has happened to me more than once in the time that I've been doing my work is that I've done the work, I've sent the invoice doesn't get paid, and then 2 months later the company folds and disappears, and I'm one of those people that doesn't get paid, and that's just how it is. And it's basically a similar thing, but I absolutely feel for you. I mean, personally, I don't back games on Kickstarter because I'm in the position where I don't go out and buy my own games anymore. But I used to be, and I just think it's a minefield. It's an absolute minefield. You got to be very careful with it. Sebastian's in the chat and says, yeah, like Inside the Box Games. Yeah, Inside the Box Games is a UK company, and it's a very similar situation. Is one Kickstarter after another. Now, since we're talking about Inside the Box Games, I must give a shout out to James Naylor from Naylor Games, designer of Magnate. Naylor Games have gone in and they've tried to rescue the things from inside the box that are rescuable, and all credit to James. He didn't have to do this, and he set himself up for a lot of extra work. But yeah, there's a couple of projects I think which Inside the Box were doing, or maybe had even produced, and Naylor Games is stepping in, trying to take over that. And in fact, the most recent Kickstarter updates are from James. So I think he's basically bought the assets of Inside the Box Games, and that's not anything I would have done, because Inside the Box have a terrible reputation. So to step in and do that and take ownership of it, yeah, all credit to him. Right, next question also from Andy. What is my favourite of the Super Skill pinball tables, and do I record my scores? So the do I record my scores is a separate thing. So I record all of my logged plays on Board Game Geek, but I never log the scores. Sometimes with a board game, if there's a score sheet, I'll write the scores on the score sheet and I'll keep the score sheet inside, but I have never recorded my scores for any other games. I know a lot of people do that. A lot of people use BG Stats, or other apps are available, I guess. And they record their individual scores, but I don't generally do that. But which is my favourite of the Super Skill pinball tables? I've got 3 boxes, I've got 12 tables. I haven't played all of them. I did enjoy the Trouble with Tribbles one. But probably my favourite one of the other ones that I've played is the casino one from Ramp It Up, because that felt like it was it's a very thematic game, but it felt really good that you had to knock out the security camera. And once you've knocked out the security camera, you can get in there. And then you had to get the keys. And once you got the keys, or once you got the code to the safe, you can then get into the safe and you can steal the gold and things like that. So there was an actual sort of story being told in a pinball game. It was really good. So I really enjoyed that one. Hang on, I'm just going to have a drink. Also, Andy wants to know, have I played any more Aleph Null? And have I had any success? I haven't actually. I did a video for it where I played through it, but I haven't had a chance to go back to it. I did take it with me one weekend, but just, yeah, ran out of time, didn't get to it. Next question from Claire. Have I played Sprawlopolis or any spin-offs? If so, what did I think of it? I haven't played Sprawlopolis. I've heard lots of good things about it. Is that the one with the cards with the squares on and you build a city? I think it's that one. Got an itchy nose. But no, I've not played Sprawlopolis. The next question from Claire. Paint the Roses is a cooperative game where the more that you advance on the score track by figuring out other players' cards, the faster the queen moves. This means that as you get better at the logical deduction, the target that you're trying to beat also increases. Okay, this leaves us feeling perpetually frustrated that we can never be good enough to win without at least one lucky guess. But you keep playing it because you love the logical deduction. So this sounds interesting. I've not played it myself, and I'm curious if anybody watching has played Paint the Roses, or let me know if you're watching this back afterwards. Let me know, have you played Paint the Roses? And is what Claire is saying true? The better you get at the logical deduction, the target that you're trying to beat also increases. So that's penalising you for getting better. That seems unusual. Claire's question is, are there any games which you keep playing despite a fundamental frustration at the design? And my initial response to this was no, because if I have a fundamental problem with the design of a game, I'm just not going to play it. I can't see me continually playing a game where I am frustrated by the way that it's designed. That was my initial response. However, there is one game that I absolutely love playing, and I have played it about 25 times, and I will continue to play it many, many, many times more. And it's not that I find the mechanisms of this game frustrating, but these are some of my least favourite mechanisms. So, least favourite mechanism for me is roll to resolve. I generally don't enjoy games where it's roll to resolve, but there is one game that I love and I play a lot of, and is effectively roll to resolve. Another mechanism which I really, really don't like is, okay, you can, if you want to, spend some resources before rolling the dice, and the more resources you spend, it will add to your dice roll. In other words, it will increase your chance of success. Now, that's a mechanism which is used quite a lot. The reason why I don't like it is, let's say, okay, I need an 8 or more to succeed. Okay, well, I've got these 3 resources. I'm going to spend 2 of these resources, so I only need a 6 or more. Okay? And then you roll the dice and you got a 9. So you didn't need to have spent the resources because you would have succeeded anyway. Or even worse, you roll and get a 5 plus 2, 7. Oh, I didn't succeed. So you've wasted the resources. I don't like games, and I don't like mechanisms where I spend the resources and then it turns out those resources were a waste. It's also why I don't like blind bidding. I like games where I'm going to spend these resources and I'm going to get something for spending the resources, not just increasing the chance of something happening. Anyway, there's another mechanism I don't like. The other mechanism that's in this game, and if you've guessed what the game is, congratulations, 5 points. But the other mechanism in this game that I don't like is that you have a deck of cards. You build a deck before the game starts, and that deck is customized for your character, and you've chosen what to build the deck. And in this game, you are a character, and your character has equipment, and your character has allies that come with you on your journey and everything else. But all of these things are represented by a card in your deck. And this is one of the most unthematic mechanisms ever in a game. The game is Arkham Horror the card game, which I absolutely love, and it might be in my top 10 games of all time, but it has all of these mechanisms in there. And yeah, I love the game. So there you go. I don't find the design of the game frustrating, because that is the design of the game. It is a little bit frustrating when your character has a gun, okay, and that gun is at the bottom of your deck. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Again, the theme of the game doesn't work with the way that the deck works. If you are an investigator or an adventurer or an explorer and you've got a gun, a leather coat, and a cat, or all of these things, then you should start with them in play. Here's my leather coat, here's my gun, here's my cat. These shouldn't be cards in your deck that you just randomly find at some point later in the adventure. Anyway, I still love the game despite those things. So yeah, I sort of half answered the question. Final question from Claire. Claire says, we all know you will play purple if available. Purple is my colour of choice. Then I would probably go to blue as my second choice. But Claire wants to know what colour Vicky would choose. Now, Vicky would choose purple first. Second, you said black. Third, you said white. There you go. So that's Vicky's colours of choice. Purple, black, and then white. Mine would probably be purple, blue, black. I think, in that order. Right, next question from Peter. This is a really good question. What are my thoughts about a game's playtime and downtime? Peter says he thinks it's absurd that people complain about games being too long when it is about enjoying the experience. Playing a video game or watching a movie takes a good while as well, and he doesn't see any sense in having an issue with game length. You're lucky, Peter. You are lucky, and I am also lucky, because for me, most of the time it doesn't matter. Most of the time, but I have some friends who are really bothered by downtime in games and the amount of time it takes. Now, I'm not saying it never bothers me, but it doesn't bother me as much as some other people. I would not want to play, for example, a 7-hour game of Tapestry. the reason is Tapestry is a 3.5 hour game. And if I spend 7 hours playing it, that's 7 hours of my life gone, which I won't get back, for something which should have taken 3 hours. So effectively, I'm wasting 3 hours of my life. And that's the problem. Now, Peter also doesn't understand why people like to complain about downtime in a game, because it's an opportunity to study other players' actions, interact with them in the game, plan your own moves and everything else. Yeah, absolutely agree. And I'm quite lucky in that I don't get as frustrated by the downtime of some of the slow players in my group. However, I can absolutely see the situation where you've already planned exactly what you're going to do next. You've already looked at the other players' boards. You've done all of that. All of those things that you said, you've done all of that. You've analysed the situation. You know what you're going to do next. And the player to your right, he's sat there going, which card do I discard? This one or this one? And 2 minutes later, they're still deciding. So that can be frustrating, because you're sat there going, look, I want to play a game. I know exactly what I'm going to do next. And you're spending ages on making a decision which isn't that important a decision. So yeah, as I say, thankfully I don't get as frustrated by slow players as some people that I know do, but there is a limit, and sometimes that limit does get crossed. Next question from Paul Richards. If I was invited to a game night but I had to dress up for the theme of the game, what game would you want to play most, and which game would you politely decline? This is another question for the guild, because I'm really interested to see what other people would say for this. So yeah, Chrissy, if you could turn this question and put it onto the guild. And again, if you're watching this video either now or afterwards, head on over to Board Game Geek, guild number 2258. There's going to be a question on there. The question is from Paul Richards, and it was, if you were invited to a game night but had to dress up for the theme of the game, what game would you want to play most, and which game would you politely decline? Now, I'm not really into dressing up that much. I can't remember the last time we did it. It would have been a murder mystery or something like that. So maybe once every 2 or 3 years we'll do it. But we don't really do it that much. We don't really have anything suitable for any costumes or anything like that. I wouldn't be averse to it. If somebody said we're going to play Arkham Horror and we're all going to come in costume, or Lost Ruins of Arnak, so I can wear the hat, or a Star Wars themed game or something like that. But it's not, I don't have a costume to hand. I would have to get one, and I wouldn't mind it. But yeah, we'll put the question on the guild. We'll have a look on there, and I'll go through, and I'll have a think about which one I would most like, and importantly, which one would you politely decline? Is there a particular game in which you would politely decline to dress up? Next question from Ninochka4, if I've pronounced your name correctly. Has been very much enjoying the Tuesday nights of Arkham Horror, so apologies that we had to cancel the one for yesterday. But they're a complete neophyte. So they've searched on BGG, found all of the campaigns and the extra cards and got completely like, yeah. If you are new to the Arkham Horror card game, you will go and you will look for it and you will find a million different expansions. And I can understand how everybody gets completely lost. The game came out in 2016. It's had multiple expansion sets. It's got so many cards available for it. Any new player, I can understand them getting completely lost. And they are asking, would I consider doing a quick beginner's guide to the world of the Arkham Horror card game? Like where you start and how you enrich your collection, what would be the campaigns you shouldn't miss? I have no plans to do one of those, but I can very simply tell you this. You buy the core set. That's all you buy. Don't buy anything else. Don't rush out and spend hundreds of pounds on buying everything. Just buy the core set. The new core set is for 1 to 4 players. The original core set was 1 to 2 players only, which you might be able to get cheap if you're only going to play 1 to 2 players. But buy the core set. The campaign included in the core set, Night of the Zealot, I think is a really good campaign. It's 3 episodes long, or 3 chapters long, and I think it's really good. And then if you like it, then you can get one of the later campaigns. But you can get them in any order. You don't have to get them all. Just dive in. And can you tell us where you get the playmats from? So yeah, so for the Arkham Horror live streams that I do, I use playmats from Powerplant Games, and they are available. If you go to any of my Arkham Horror streams where I use the mats, there is a link in the description to their website where you can order the mats. Right, we've got quite a few questions. I'm going slowly through these, aren't I? We might have to take a short break. Right, short break to tell you about the contest. So each month, as part of these live Q&As, I do a giveaway contest where I give one person £50 worth of games vouchers from Games Law. Now, £25 of that voucher comes from Games Law themselves, so thank you very much to Games Law for supporting the show with that. And the other £25 comes from me. The winner last month was Brian Sander. So congratulations, Brian. I've already been in contact with you about your win and how you redeem those vouchers. To enter the contest for this month, and this is a contest that you need to enter, okay? You don't just randomly win, you have to actually enter it. What you want to do is you want to click on the link that Vicky's going to put in the chat now, and that takes you to a Google form. The Google form will ask you some details, for example, your name, your email address, the secret word, and whether you're a patron supporter or not. The secret word for today, I'm going to say, is smoothie, because that's what's in here. This is not a glass of cider. This is a banana, chocolate, raspberry, yogurt. What else is in there? Jaffa cake. No, there's no Jaffa. Peanut butter. Yeah, it's a smoothie. So smoothie is the secret word for today. And if you are a patron supporter of mine, make sure you put yes to you are a patron supporter, and you will get 2 entries into the hat instead of 1. So generally speaking, 2 out of 3 winners in these live Q&As are patron supporters. But yeah, thank you very much to all of my patron supporters for funding the channel. This video is not paid for in any way. I don't get any money from this, and all of the advertising revenue goes to charity. So the only way I'm able to continue creating videos like this is thanks to the support of the Patreon campaign. So yeah, a big thank you to for all of your support. And if you want to become a patron supporter and get exclusive access to some behind the scenes videos and the Slack channel where there's lots of great discussions, patreon.com/gaming rules. Right, back to the questions. So the next question is from, where are we up to? Phil. Phil says, which games have you come across where you thought that the components were a bit meh? Lackluster art, shoddy materials, flimsy cards, that sort of things. So, WizKids, which is one of my clients, and I do a lot of videos for WizKids at the moment, about 6 or so years ago, when WizKids started branching out into doing board games, the components that they had in their games were not good. They were really thin cards, they were really flimsy components, and unfortunately, WizKids still have a bit of a reputation for bad components, and that is totally unfair, because over the last 4 or 5 years, WizKids board games that they make have got just as good a components as any other games, if not better. So the components now in WizKids are really good. But going back 6 or 7 years ago, I never forget the cards for Starfleet. Oh God, what was it game? It was a Star Trek big game. It was quite a good game, but the cards in it were just wafer thin. It was just awful. Castles of Burgundy is famously bad for its low quality components. The artwork is bland, and as a Eurogamer, I don't mind that. But the little tiles, they were like 1/3 of a mil thick cardboard. It was just not good. In terms of lackluster art, anything from Splotter, if you can call that artwork, and I don't mean to be rude, but their games do not have good artwork. And of course, another one that is a very, very popular game, but infamously bad components, and that's Terraforming Mars. The actual board game for Terraforming Mars, the components in it are not good. Yeah, not good. So that's it. There's a few from me. If you've got some ideas of which games did you get where the components were lackluster or the artwork was a bit meh, let me know. Let me know what you think. But conversely, let's go back to a positive. Which games stand out as having got it almost 100% spot on? There's so many games come out these days, and a lot of focus is made on how good a game looks, too much in my opinion, but there's a lot of games coming out that have really, really good production quality. Now, I'm not going to talk about games with miniatures. So putting games with miniatures aside for a minute, games which have come out which I was like, wow, when it came out. I remember when I got Caverna. And I got Caverna, and I bought Caverna, and I bought the big box of Caverna, and I was at it, and I was just, wow, look at these components. Now, you look at them and you're like, whatever. It's nothing special anymore. But when Caverna came out, I was like, wow, these components are just absolutely fantastic. As I say, by modern standards, they're now just run-of-the-mill, nothing special. But Vindication, I think, was very good production quality in Vindication. Sky Mines, I was really pleased with Sky Mines. This is a game from Deep Print Games and Pegasus Games. It's the re-implementation of Mombasa. But what impressed me about that is, I mean, there was nothing special about it. It was just a really nice package. And it was the first game I've seen where instead of you needing to buy another third-party insert that costs as much as the game and weighs as much as the game, they included these little cardboard boxes that you folded together and you made them. And all of the components went in them. So it's kind of got its own insert built in. And I was just really impressed by that. And of course, pretty much anything from Eagle Gryphon Games. All of the Vital Lacerda games from Eagle Gryphon, the production quality is fantastic. Rococo Deluxe Edition, which also has Eno tool artwork and graphic design, that was fantastic production quality as well. They are expensive games, you are paying for that quality. But yeah, there's a lot of games which have come out which for me have got it absolutely spot on. Next question from Mick. You have often been asked the Desert Island question about one board game, and the answer is always Mage Knight. But Desert Island Discs gives you a chance of 8 recordings, which changes the dynamics a bit. If you were to do something like that, rather than the games themselves, how do you think you would go on about deciding your list? Would you want a mix of game types, a game length, or complexity? Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think if I was to pick 8 games to be stranded with on a desert island, I wouldn't just go with my top 8 favourite games from my list. I would want to go with, right, here's a game that's a really heavy, complex game that's going to take 6 hours to play. Here's another game that's a 5-minute filler. I'd want a good mix of games depending on the mood that I'm in. I'd also be looking for games with high variability and high replayability. Not necessarily, though they're not necessarily the same things, but I definitely want games with high replayability. And some of my favourite games of all time are brilliant games, but I don't think I'd want to play them 50 times. But there are other games that I would want to play 50 times and have played 50 times. Right, final lot of questions before we go over to the live questions. This is from Stuart, who managed to get his questions in just before I closed the questions. Quickfire round. Me and quickfire rounds don't go together. So, simple wooden token or realistic resource token. Now, if you're saying simple wooden token as in like a wooden cube or something that's a realistic shape, realistic resource tokens every day of the week. Love them. Think they're great. Dual layer board or single layer board. Dual layer board as long as it isn't warped. If you give me a dual layer board that's constantly bent and I'm having to keep bending it back, not interested. Deck building or tableau building. That's a tricky one. I mean, I love deck building as a mechanism, but I also love tableau building. Oh, I'm going to say tableau building because it doesn't have the randomness of the card draw. Action points or action drafting. Definitely action drafting. The reason is games where you have action points to spend are a little bit old school in the design. And the ones that come to mind are Tikal. What were the 3 games that's here? Tikal, Mexica, and Java. All of those games, good games, but they had the mechanism where, right, it's your turn, you've got 10 action points to spend. Now it's your turn, you've got 10 action points to spend. Problem is, that player takes 10 minutes over their turn working out how to spend their 10 action points. So yeah, action drafting, much better. Area control or worker placement. Easy, worker placement. Bag draw or card draw. Card draw. Because it's less random. Assuming that bag draw means you draw it out of the bag, then you put it back in the bag. Whereas card draw means you draw it, but you don't put it back in the deck. Then card draw, for me, is a bit less random. There we go. Right, that is the end of all of the questions that we've been asked in advance. So thank you very much to everybody for those questions. And if you are watching this video back afterwards and you want to ask me any questions next month and you can't make the live shows, then just join the guild on Board Game Geek and ask me the question when the next one comes up. The next one is, the next Q&A will be the 14th of June. So yeah, so it'll probably be the weekend before that. I will put up the thread on Board Game Geek asking for questions. Right, okay, so let's move over to the live questions that you've been asking since we went live today. How many have we got? We've probably got enough to keep us going till 6:30. So I'm going to say last chance for any questions. If you have any more questions for me, you have 1 more minute to ask them, and then we're going to say no more questions because I've got plenty here to go through. So next question from Brian. Have I looked at any of the new cards in the Ark Nova expansion? And if so, what are my initial thoughts? I haven't. I haven't looked at any of the new cards from the expansion at all. I do enjoy Ark Nova, so I will hopefully look forward to getting the expansion at some point. But yeah, I've not looked at any of the new cards. Next question from Super Mateys. I'd love to hear my new thoughts on the newly revealed cards and other components for the Ark Nova expansion. Okay, I've not seen any of those yet, so I can't. Unfortunately, I can't give you any opinions or thoughts on that because I've not looked at them. Next question from Norman. Apart from aesthetics, do deluxe components add anything to a game? No, absolutely nothing whatsoever. Deluxe components are purely aesthetics, but they are, for me, they are aesthetically pleasing, and therefore I will enjoy a game more because of the upgraded components, because it looks nice and I will get a nicer feeling from playing the game, unless I lose, and then I'll hate the game and want to destroy the components. Next question from Adrian. He missed the stream last night, but what is my favourite first-person shooter? So for Patreon supporters on the Slack channel, we were supposed to be playing Arkham Horror last night. Unfortunately, Emily has done her back in and she wasn't able to make it, so we cancelled the stream last night and we didn't do Arkham Horror. Vicky was out at her jewellery making course, so I had 2 hours to myself, which I hadn't planned for. Now, later this week, I'm going to be covering Apex Legends, the board game. I've put it somewhere, but anyway. Now, Apex Legends is a computer game. It's a first-person shooter computer game. And I thought, let's give it a go. Now, the last time I played a first-person shooter computer game was in the 90s when I was playing Unreal Tournament. I think it was the 90s. Yeah, I think it was the late 90s when I was playing Unreal Tournament. So I'm not very good at these games. I've not played any of these new Battle Royale games, Fortnite or anything like that. But yesterday I downloaded Apex Legends and I spent about an hour and a half playing it. And it was a private stream for Patreon supporters. So if you're a Patreon supporter of mine on the Slack channel, I do these ad hoc live streams now and again. And the question from Adrian is, what is my favourite first-person shooter-style game? Am I a run and gun or more long range? I don't really have a favourite one because I don't really play them. Back in the day, though, I remember playing games like Half-Life. Half-Life was fantastic. That is a first-person shooter computer game. But one of my favourite ones is Metro 2033. I absolutely loved Metro 2033. The whole look and the feel of that game, I very much enjoyed that. Now, they are solo computer games rather than these, massively online multiplayer battle arena type things. So those are the ones that I've played in the past. BioShock was also fantastic. Well, the first two anyway. Third one, not so much. So BioShock 1 and 2. Half-Life was extremely good. Dead Space was very, very good. And Metro 2033 was also very good. So there's some computer games. There's some first-person shooter games that I've played in the past. Stacey's got a question that was related to the previous question. Is this about aesthetics? What about Fractured Sky with the magnet in the deluxe version versus the basic? I don't know Fractured Sky, I'm afraid. So I can't help you with that one. I've heard Fractured Sky. I've heard of it. And I've seen a few people do videos for it recently, but I've not really looked into it and I've not been involved in it. Next question from Stuart. Talking of overpriced Kickstarters, what is a reasonable price for a non-deluxe mid-weight game? Well, that's impossible to answer because even non-deluxe, a game could be medium weight and still have not many components, or it could be medium weight and have lots of components. Let's take, for example, Great Western Trail. Okay, so I'm just going to pick a medium to heavyweight game, Great Western Trail, a non-deluxe version, what is the reasonable price point? I'm not sure. I'm going to say probably about €60 because prices have gone up in the last few years. I know if you look at the price of some of the games that were coming out at Essen last year, they were like 60, €70. I was shocked at that price, but that's the price that games are now. So yeah, I'm not a very good person to ask that because, as I mentioned earlier on, I don't tend to buy games these days because of the work that I do. I mean, that's great, it's not that, oh, well, Paul gets all these games for free. I don't get all of my games for free. It's just, the work that I do and the games that I cover on the channel, I get review copies, which is what I use. So yeah. Next question from Boros55. Do I also have some exclusives for Ark Nova like some other YouTubers? Unfortunately not. No, my YouTube channel is not big enough to get any exclusive like that. That's something that the other channels get. I don't get anything for that, I'm afraid. Next question from Norman. Norman just ordered Teotihuacan on Kickstarter, but who needs 2 kidneys? Would I ever complain about a game's cost? And I won't even mention postage. So this is all tied in with the game's cost. And yeah, Norman, I'm. It's weird because we look at Teotihuacan, we look at the deluxe edition of Teotihuacan. Board and Dice are one of my clients. I have a very good working relationship with Board and Dice. I do lots of videos for lots of their games. I was invited to be a host on their live stream over the weekend. I am very likely going to be working for them at Essen this year, doing demos for them. I'm involved with them. They are one of my regular clients. I get on with them. I know them well. I like their games. That means I am going to get a copy of Teotihuacan, the deluxe edition. Yeah, I'm gonna get one. They've already told me that I'm gonna get one when it comes out, and that's gonna be great. And I'm gonna get it, and I'm gonna look at it, and I'll do an unboxing video for it, and then I'll do another playthrough video for it, and I'll do all of that stuff. And that's the position that I'm in as a YouTuber. They know that I'm gonna cover it on the channel when I get it, so it makes sense that they send me a copy of it. What that does mean is it's hard for me to get involved in the conversations which other people get involved in is, look at this new game, it's gone on Kickstarter, oh wow, it's too expensive. Because I'm not paying that cost, so it's difficult for me to kind of relate to it. I mean, I kind of still do, because I look at the game and I go, wow, that's expensive. And then you look at the postage cost. I have a big hang up with postage costs. I have a real problem with postage costs. So when I look at the postage costs, it's, I don't know, it's shocking. So yeah, I don't know, again, going back to Stuart's point, I don't know what a reasonable price for a game is. And would I ever complain about a game's cost? I would never complain about a game's cost, but that doesn't mean I don't have my own thoughts on, wow, that game is way too expensive for what you get, right? Now, I can never say these things publicly because the games are ones that are produced by my clients who I've been paid to create videos for. So I'm not going to turn around and say anywhere in public, oh yeah, this game was way too expensive for what you get, because the publisher is not going to enjoy that, and I would probably lose work for them. But yeah, games are expensive these days, and postage costs are crazy. What surprises me, and I will say this publicly, is what surprises me is that even with these extortionate postage costs, and I mean extortionate is probably the wrong word, they seem just crazy high, like half the cost of the game again, people are still doing them. These Kickstarters are still really successful. So you see these games going on Kickstarter, they're like $150 with $75 shipping. And people are still backing these games. And people who are watching this video right now are some of the people who are backing these games. So clearly there is still a market. People are still happy to pay these postage costs, even though I'm looking at that and I'm just going, I would never, ever want to pay $75 postage costs for a game. I mean, I could go out and buy another game for that, or I could buy 2 games for that. Maybe not 2 games, but yeah, it does seem crazy. But I guess the thing with Kickstarter is, if you don't get it through this Kickstarter, you might not get it at retail. I don't know. What is it? If you're one of the people that is happy to pay huge postage costs for a Kickstarter, let me know why. And I'm not questioning it as you're crazy. I'm questioning it as a genuine question. Why are you happy to pay these high postage costs? Is it because you really want the game and there is no way you're going to get it other than the Kickstarter? Or is it some other reason? Let me know. I am interested. Next question from Tammy. What game do I think is the heaviest strategy-wise in the smallest box? Oh, gosh. It's a good question. But right now, with me being an hour and 20 minutes into this live Q&A, I might have to have a think about that one. I mean, the heaviest game for the small box. I mean, Red Cathedral is a relatively small box and is a very good game. It's not a heavy game. It's a medium weight game, but it's a very good game weight to size of box ratio. I'm looking around my room. I've got a lot of big box games in this room. Yeah, let's say Red Cathedral. If anybody else has got any other thoughts, put them in the chat. What about games up there that are in really small boxes? I mean, you could say the Crew, Mission Deep Sea. Has that got strategy? No. Well, I mean, it does have strategy, but no. Yeah, I think Red Cathedral, because Red Cathedral box size is really good. What's over there? Yeah, let's go with that one. Let's go with Red Cathedral, because I played it recently and I remember it. Next question from Stacey. How do I get through a chunky Euro game with 4 or even 3 players in less than 3 hours? In all of your 3-player game groups, it always takes 3 or more hours, or are you thinking your turns through much? It depends on the game. I mean, if you're talking a really chunky Euro game, then I'd be looking at 3 hours with 3 players as well. So it depends how chunky is chunky. But yeah, there are, I mean, if we take Ark Nova's been talked about a lot recently. I know groups that can play Ark Nova with 3 players in 2.5 hours. And those same groups can play with 4 players in 3 hours. So that's pretty good, but it does need everybody to know the game ahead of time, and it needs everybody to play relatively quickly. Now, you've said, are you thinking about your turns too much? If everybody at the table is happy with the 3.5, 4 hour game, take 4 hours. The worst thing, and this is going back to the earlier comments we had from Peter about downtime and other people getting frustrated at the table. There is nothing worse than when you are sat at a table and 2 of the players are getting frustrated that you're not playing quick enough, and they are putting pressure on the people playing slowly to play faster, which brings them outside of their comfort zone. It just leads to a negative play experience. So if your group want to spend 4 hours playing Ark Nova, spend 4 hours playing Ark Nova. If I spent 4 hours playing Ark Nova, I would have no problem with it whatsoever. A game takes as long as it takes, and as long as your group is happy with the pace that you're playing, continue to play at that pace. But if you do want to bring the play time down, then yeah, you just basically need to play quicker. And there's various things you can do. You can plan your turn ahead, make sure people are really thinking about their own turn ahead of time, so that you don't get to the point where somebody's, oh, I've taken my turn, right, I'm now going to go and put the kettle on, now I'm going to check my phone, now I'm going to take a photograph on Instagram, oh, and it's my turn again, oh, right, well, what am I going to do? You know, you need to be thinking about your turn when it isn't your turn, so that at least you have some idea of what you're doing. Next question from Peter. Which board game is the oldest that you own? That is a good question, Peter. There are some very old board games in the attic. There's a very old copy of Axis and Allies, but there's also some very old games from the 70s in the attic. And I can't remember which one is the oldest, but there's definitely a couple in the attic. I have the old SPI version of War of the Ring, which I think is from like 1978 or something like that. I've also got some very old Avalon Hill games up in the attic from the late 70s. So it's a good question. And what I'm going to do, Peter, actually, let's put this on the guild. Yeah, let's put this as a guild question, because I want to answer this. I'm going to take some time out and I am going to go through my collection and work out which the oldest game is. but I want to know what everybody else's is. So, Chrissy, if you can convert this into a question, and Peter H, if you're still watching, head on over to the guild number 2258. There will be a question on there, and it is, what is your oldest game? Now, Chrissy, before you post the question, I want you to caveat it. I don't want people to start putting chess. I don't want people to start putting poker or backgammon. We're not talking about the oldest board game that you have a version of. We're talking about the physical game that you have. So, for example, I have a version of chess downstairs, and chess is from whatever year it was. That doesn't count. I'm talking about the oldest physical game that you've got, the year that game was actually created. So, there's a few that come to mind. I will go and find out, and I will put the answer on the guild later on tonight or tomorrow. Next question from ID Jester. How many penguins would it take to kill an elephant? Finally, we've got some real questions. How many penguins would it take to kill an elephant? Is it a joke, or is it a trick question, or is it a serious question? So I'm going to say 1. Because if that penguin did a little walk and the elephant followed it, and then the penguin went onto some ice, thin ice, right? And then the elephant fell through the thin ice and drowned, then 1 penguin has killed an elephant. Maybe it's some moral, philosophical story. I don't know. I'm going to answer 1. Next question from Enzar. What game did you play the most and how many times? Which game did you... Oh, that's another really good question. So, games that I've played the most. I have played through the ages probably about 200, maybe 250 times. I have played Puerto Rico probably about 300 times. I have played Castles of Burgundy probably about 250 times. They are the 3 board games that come to mind that I have played a lot of, mainly because there has been an online implementation of them. And I took a career break in 2003, I think it was. I took about 4 or 5 months off work in 2003. And at the time, I was using an online gaming platform called Brett Spielveld, which I think is still there. And they had Puerto Rico. And I played it 5 times a day, every day, for like months. So those are the games which I've played probably the most. If you don't count Magic the Gathering and Netrunner. If you include Magic the Gathering and Netrunner, I don't know. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games. But yeah, board game wise, it's probably those 3. Next question from Peter. Exactly where do I ask questions in advance for the live Q&A? So, on my guild, on Board Game Geek, it is guild number 2258. About 3 or 4 days before each Q&A. And if you go there now, you will see. If you go there now, you will see that there is a question thread for the next Q&A. So right now, you will see the latest post, well, apart from the ones today, is that I made a post saying, what questions do you want to ask me for this Q&A? And if you keep an eye on the guild, make sure you don't just join, but make sure you subscribe. Because if you don't subscribe, you will be a member of the guild, but you will never get told anything. So make sure you turn on notifications. Otherwise, you won't see anything. And that's where you ask. There will be a thread on there in advance. Right. Last few questions. So Gianni says, and you also asked this on the BGG Guild after the last Q&A was posted. Oh, right. Okay. But you've caught it here. Excellent. Would love for me to go over my streaming setup when filming gaming sessions. Oh, yeah. No, I remember now. Apologies for that. Yeah, the reason why I've never done one of those in the past is I'm always changing stuff. I am always tweaking the cameras, microphones, and the setup like that. So what I'll do is I will put a post and I will make this as a separate post on my guild of what equipment I currently use. And I'll do this for you, but I'm sure other people will find it useful as well. And I will list all of the equipment that I use on that thread. And then I will try to remember that whenever I change anything, I will update the thread. So keep an eye on the guild. And at some point in the next week, hopefully, cross fingers, I will make that post for you. If I don't, please drop me a message through Board Game Geek. Just send me a geek mail and say, "Oi, Paul, you told me you do this." And I'll do it. Yeah, and Jason wants to know the same thing. Jason wants to know which type of cameras and mics do I use. So yeah, Jason, keep an eye on the guild. There will be a thread appearing where I will talk about the different equipment that I use. What games am I very good at? And do they have anything in common? Oh, what games am I good at? I mean, I think I'm pretty good at Through the Ages. I would say that I am a good player at Through the Ages, although my last game, you wouldn't think it. Yeah, I think I'm a good player at Through the Ages. I don't know any games that I'm very good at. The problem is I don't play that many games enough, apart from the ones that I mentioned earlier on, like Puerto Rico and Castles of Burgundy and things like that. A lot of the modern games I don't play enough, and where I am now, I just enjoy playing the game, and I don't play them to get better. I just enjoy the experience of playing the games. So yeah, I think I'm generally speaking, I'm good at games. Some games I will be better than others. But of the ones that I'm good at, do they have anything in common? They probably do. There's probably a particular type of game that just suits the way that my brain works. Dan the Crow says, is there a game that you would recommend for playing in a lunch hour with a group of 3 people or 6 or more people? Yeah, absolutely. So games to be played in a lunch hour with a group of 3 people, there's loads. There are absolutely loads of great 3-player games that you can easily play in an hour. In fact, you can easily play them in half an hour, because you've got to account for, leaving your place of work, getting to where you're having lunch, setting the game up, playing the game, putting it away, and then getting back to your desk. We used to play Dominion at one place that I worked. That was a great game that we played at lunchtimes. We used to all play that pretty quickly. But yeah, it really depends what kind of games you want to play, because you can play simple games like So Clover, or you might want to play a sort of Euro style game. In terms of Euro style games that can be played in 30 minutes, nothing springing to mind. There are some out there, definitely, but nothing that's springing to mind. But lunch hour with 6 or more people, I'd be looking to be playing games like Just One or something like that. Now, you might get a bit bored playing Just One every lunch break, but in terms of a 6-player game that can be played in sort of 30 to 45 minutes, yeah. And there's loads and loads of games like Love Letter and things like that. They're not particularly my preference of games, but they are games that you can play in 15 minutes. So they might work. Point Salad, Brian says in the chat. Yeah, any roll and writes. That's a very good point, Joe. There's some really good roll and writes out there. Ganshon Clever, or any of the games in that series. Trails of Tucana is a really good roll and write from Porter Games. So yeah, that's really good. Pioneer Rails, that is on Kickstarter right now from Dranda Games. That's a really... You could probably play that. You could definitely play that in 45 minutes. You could probably play that in 30 minutes once you know how to play. So yeah, there are lots of good games that you can play in 30 minutes. But yeah, look at roll and writes as a genre. Next question from Tammy. What percentage of your Patreon supporters aren't from the UK? Tammy never enters the contest because you're in the USA, but you're still a Patreon supporter. You can still enter the contest. The contest is for £50 worth of vouchers. So even with shipping costs, you will still get a game out of it. So feel free to join. In fact, the last winner, Brian is over in the States. So yeah, you can still join. I don't know what percentage. I don't know whether I can get the stats on that from Patreon. Patreon doesn't give me stats of where people are, but I'm going to take a very rough guess and say 75% of my Patreon supporters are not in the UK. Would you concur? You'd say 50-50. Okay. I mean, in order to get the answer, we're going to have to go through the entire list. And some of them we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of Patreon supporters who I know, but there are some Patreon supporters that I have who there's a name there and they're not on the Slack channel, and I don't really know who they are. But yeah, Vicky says 50-50. I think 25% in the UK. That would be my rough guess. Next question from Peter. Desert Island Games. Have you ever been approached to appear on 5 Games for Doomsday? I have, a number of times. Ben has asked me a couple of times to be on the show. And it's not that I've said no. It's just that I've listened to a couple of his shows, and he does a fantastic show. and I've never felt comfortable in being on the show. I don't know, because the other people who he's had on the show have all been really good guests, and they've all had really good discussions. And I just didn't feel confident enough about myself that I would be good enough to be on the show. So I've said no the couple of times he's asked me, but he said that the offer's always there if I want to do it. And it's kind of like I'd love to feel that I had the confidence to be able to do it, but I just don't feel that I have. Paul is asking for a link to the contest. Yes, link to the contest is there. It's in the chat right now, and it will be in the description of the video. And the secret word, you need the secret word. Don't forget the secret word. The secret word is smoothie, however you want to pronounce it. Next question from Rick. You can go off some people. So the question from Rick is, have I built a new rebel base yet? Because in the in the game of Star Wars Rebellion last week, Rick was a very naughty boy. And he blew up a planet, and he's not very nice. If you ever see Rick, just be very, very careful, especially if he's got a Death Star with him. So no, I haven't built a new rebel base yet, but I am building one in secret over there. The final question from Chris. Oldest game, brackets, not chess, etc., that I play regularly. Now, there's not many games that I play regularly. Oh, Through the Ages? I mean, that was 2006. So the first edition of Through the Ages was 2006. Okay. We're just going to have a minute while I go over to my list of played games. It's a good question. It's a good question. And I'm going to go through my list. I might not. I'm going to try and spend just a minute, talk amongst yourselves, but I'm going to spend a minute just trying to find you the answer to this question. Because I think there's a way that you can go to Board Game Geek and you can sort your collection by the year. And I keep trying to do this. I can never remember how. But can I sort my collection by the year it came out? So let's have a look. I mean, you say regularly play. There's not many games that I regularly play. There's games that I've played a lot of. So I played a lot of Ra. That was 1999. I've also played a lot of Lost Cities. That was also 1999. I don't play either of those two games anymore. Even Mage Knight. I don't play Mage Knight regularly. There's very few games that I play regularly. Ingenious is 2004. Now, Ingenious by Reiner Knizia, which, Chris, you'll know, is a fantastic game. Came out in 2004. That used to be one of the family go-to games that whenever we went round to Vicky's family. That has now kind of been replaced by Just One and So Clover, but it would be nice to play that again at some point. Alhambra, played that loads of times, but again, not regularly playing it. Race for the Galaxy was 2007, but I've not played Race for the Galaxy, and I can't see me playing Race for the Galaxy again. Agricola was 2007, but do I play that regularly? Dominion, do I play that regularly? No. Yeah. You've thrown me with the regularly statement. Only because there aren't that many games that I play regularly. I mean, Castles of Burgundy, I am playing that now and again on Board Game Arena, and that is 2011. So that's 12 years old. That doesn't... It feels like it should be older. Is that 12 years? Yeah, 2011 is 12 years, isn't it? Aura et Labora was 2011 as well. Wow. Princess of Florence is 2000. Now, I'm not playing that regularly, but I am going to be playing the new version of that in a couple of weeks. So in a couple of weeks' time, the new version of Princess of Florence is going to be arriving here, and I'm going to be covering it on the channel. And that was one of the milestone games for me in my transition into Euro games. That was the first proper Euro that I think I actually played. Yeah, I'm going through this list. I mean, I'm going to be here a while going through this list because I've got 800 games. But I think it might be Through the Ages, because Through the Ages, the original game came out in 2006, and whilst the new version of the game is technically a different game, it's still Through the Ages. So Through the Ages is a 17-year-old game now, and I am still regularly playing it thanks to the app. So let's go with that one, unless anybody knows any different and tells me afterwards. Right, we are done. So we're only 10 minutes over, but that's fine. It's been good. Thank you very much to everybody for watching it. And just as I mentioned at the start, I'm not getting paid any money for doing this video. No sponsorship on the channel. All of the advertising revenue goes to charity. All of the super chats, if anybody's sent any super chats, I know Peter did earlier on, that money goes to charity as well. So the only reason I'm able to do this is thanks to the support of the Patreon campaign. So yeah, big thank you to all of you for supporting the channel and keeping it going. And obviously I don't just make these videos, I do a lot of other content as well, which isn't paid for. And that's what the Patreon is for. So yeah, thank you very much to all of my Patreon supporters. And if you want to become a Patreon supporter, you'll get access to the Slack channel, lots of extra discussions, lots of extra juicy behind the scenes details, lots of extra videos as well. So if you're a Patreon supporter, you're going to have access to 3 Apex Legends videos over the next few days. Tomorrow afternoon, Dan Apsey is coming round and we're going to be playing Apex Legends here tomorrow afternoon. And that will be a very rough video because it will be Paul learns how to play the game. That will be a Patreon only stream. Then on Friday, I'm going to be teaching some other people how to play Apex Legends as a practice game, Patreon only. Then on Saturday afternoon, we're going to be doing another Patreon only behind the scenes filming of Apex Legends. And all of that is in preparation for Saturday night, where we're going to be doing a public live playthrough of Apex Legends. Very excited about it. The next game from Glass Cannon Unplugged, following their success of Frostpunk. And I'm doing a live playthrough of it on the channel this Saturday, 7 o'clock. So if you're interested in that, check out the channel. You can see, if you go to the channel now, you will see that video is ready to go. So you can click on it, set your reminders, set your notifications, whatever you want to do. But yeah, if you're a Patreon supporter, you get access to all sorts of extra behind the scenes stuff. Give the video a thumbs up, give me a like. And if you are one of the people watching this video back later, please leave me a comment. Let me know some of the questions that were asked. Let me know what your answer would have been. Like, what is the oldest game in your collection and all of those other things. And just as a reminder, head on over to the guild. Guild number 2258. Got some great questions on there from tonight. So pop on over there, put your answers in, let me know what you think. Other than that, we're all done. Time to go for dinner, and then I will see some of you later on. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.